Hi, it's Colleen Schmidt from Divination Counseling Service, here to look at the full moon. And it really acts like a full moon, so that was a real faux pas there, of November 5th, 2025, which begins at 8:17 a.m. So I wanted to start with Uranian because I've been doing that and a lot of people seem to like it. So I'm going to leave it in there. I want to talk about a few things that come up right as we look at the Aries point, okay? So we still have Neptune in the Aries point, which means that we don't always know what we can believe. And this is, it's great because it increases our compassion. And that's been a good thing. And I think it will continue to be a good thing as Poseidon is down here with the sun, and they're being affected as well. So there is that as the good side, okay? The bad side with Poseidon and Neptune, as I've talked about before, is deception. It is propaganda. It is out and out lies. So, at the same time that we are increasing our abilities to be more compassionate as people, we're also dealing with this idea that we're being lied to. Now, in some cases, the external lies are indeed something that I think eventually is going to come out. And starting with the last new moon, but this full moon in particular, we have opportunities to decipher those things, to be able to go out and get our own information. If it's a personal issue, I still think you're going to be able to trip yourself on it. I also want to say that some of this deception and propaganda is also related to, and we'll get to this later with some other things, perhaps changes, as we've been talking about, that are necessary within our organizations, our associates. Okay, so the chart still features that Neptune-Poseidon combination. Now, the smart thing to do with this energy, what I've been trying to do, of course, I've been crippled, although I'm down to a cane, guys, and sometimes I don't even use it, but I'm not quite there yet, and I have begun my mouth surgeries, so, which is why I'm probably talking funny. But there's my Neptune, Saturn. But the realities that we are dealing with are giving us an opportunity to be more spiritual, to open up. And I'm not talking religious here, people. I don't think religion has a great deal to do with spirituality. That's just my own personal feeling. I think some other people may feel differently. I know people who are religious, but that are also, in my opinion, extremely spiritual people. So one doesn't negate the other. I just happen to be somebody who is very much into spirit and the one force, one source, and all of that, but not religion as I see as dogma. But I also, as a young person, did a big study in religion and realized that 88 books are missing from the Bible. They're in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So with that said, I'm always leery of religious garbage. And that's how I'm going to put it, okay? Because I think religion tends to carry a lot of baggage. Now, as we move and look around, you see that there is right here, a Jupiter Admetus, okay? Now, Jupiter Admetus is really about good luck, but through being settled, through resting, through standstill or indifference. And there, again, if you take this time to meditate, to pray, that I think that you can really see that it helps you create a distance between you and whatever it is that you find to be a problem. I have a big thing about social injustices. So it helps me distance myself from that emotional feeling, because our emotions don't really help us. They only create chaos. Now, with that said, if you find that you've been depressed through these disappointments, I have, or if you find that you've been angry through, say, things that are going on in the world, use it in a positive way, because I don't think that our emotions are something we should negate. I don't think that we should allow them to role us in our lives. What I do believe we should do is learn from them. I think they're trying to teach us something. I think there's a lesson to learn through our anger and through our depression, and that energy can be used to a higher good. So one of the things this is good for, though, is resting. It really is good for resting. It does also talk about how when you stop doing something, how it can be really good for you. So that's one thing I wanted to talk about. The other thing is this Sun, Poseidon, Neptune. Okay, now they're all affected by the Aries point. They actually complete pictures here in a sense. Not total completion, because that would be 4 planets. But of course you do have that with the Jupiter Edemetus, with the Sun Poseidon. See, there's a lot of different ways we can do this. But what it refers to is confusion mentally. And it talks about how there's a lot of chaos in our world, because this is the Aries point. So there isn't a person out there that isn't feeling this on some level. This is happening to everyone. Okay? And what happens is it upsets our spirit, which is why it's really important to go back within and get in touch with that part of yourself that is connected to God. Yes, parts of God are in all of us. That is one of my key beliefs. So get in touch with that, what they call the God sparks or the God seeds. But there's a part of you that is connected all the time to the source. And I think that if we could get more in touch with that, for some people it'll be listening to music. For some people it'll be straight out meditation. For other people it might be when they're involved in projects and they just kind of get so absorbed in things that the mind actually finds clarity. So a really good time to do that because of what's happening here. Okay. There's other pictures we could talk about here, but those are the big ones that really kind of stand out. There is Chiron is not far away from this dynamic, and so Chiron is actually asking us to look at the alternatives. It's also asking us to heal, but realize with Chiron healing, there is generally tears. Although you'd think I'd be totally healed with all the crying I've been doing. I mean, I don't even know from one day to the next if I'm going to get up and cry. The other thing is the moon, okay? So if you look at the distance between the moon and Chiron, okay, to this perspective, there is a little bit of symmetry happening here. And in the case of I'm looking at Washington, D.C., I would say the moon is the people. And the people are going to go for alternative actions. Well, that's actually already started happening. As soon as they said the shutdown was affecting SNAP benefits, which normally it wouldn't, because there is a money for that, which now has been ordered to be released. But you think about how people have really stepped up. I personally have increased the amount of charity I give, okay, to particularly food. Okay, so I think it's wonderful. Every day I pick up an article where people are just literally stepping up. And they're doing what they should do, which is to help take care of their fellow men. And so it's very heartwarming to see. So that's a really positive example. I think that the people stepping up and the healing that is going to result of that is going to be very powerful. So I'm very proud of the way we're handling this, instead of getting all boohoo and upset and even rioting or doing anything else that we could have done. We're not. We're not going to pick up that mantle. We're going to continue with peaceful protests, and we're going to take care of our own. And that's what we all need to be doing. And even the protests are about protecting our own. So it's really good to see the people standing up, and I want to say thank you to anyone who is standing up. I personally, I'm standing up where I can. Standing up is still tough for me, i.e. broken ankle. However, I am getting better. So when I jump to what I call the next Aries point, because we want to look at this from two angles to get everything. The first thing that pops up is that we have this Jupiter, let me do what it is, to Mercury, and make it red. Maybe it'll make it, oops. No, it just stayed at Jupiter, which of course, that's pretty cool. There we go. So in the Aries point, because I want to stay with the Aries point, okay, the other one would have showed the United States. We'll get there in a minute, but for now I want to stay with the world. Jupiter, this is just being cheerful, okay? It's also being talkative. It's also about, making lively conversations with other people, having good conversation, cheerful conversations with other people, okay? Now, the next thing I'm going to point out is Uranus, and I know I've pointed this out before because this is what is called a long game. In other words, this one's been in effect for months. It's difficult for us to see. It still is because of Neptune. But I'm starting to be able to see it only in this whole reaction to how people have dealt with this whole food issue. And it's basically talking about how, as a world, we're going to be facing changed conditions which we must accept. It's hard to see them with Neptune still there. We may have to wait until March when Neptune is finally past that point good enough for us to be able to see what they mean. But these changes seem to start with a jump or a leap, and they're transformations, okay? But they're also cracks. They're going to be showing us cracks in systems. I think that worldwide, no matter where you are, I think that that's something that you can see. So it's almost like, as a world, even though we can't really see it, we're beginning to understand that transformations are happening, and the best thing we can do is go within, make sure we're taking the highest possible road, and as those changes come in and take effect, that we can deal with them in a more humane way. So I definitely think that that is going on, and just to point these things out to you, that we're going through a lot, that never before in history have we ever been here, and nowhere in the future do we see us getting here again. So we're in this most unique position. That really puts a highlight there on that moon and Chiron, which again are still affected because we're in the Aries point. So we, the people of the United States, are looking at these alternatives, but I think it's a key for the whole world that, you know what, we don't have to let the rich people decide everything. Some things we can just do on our own. So it's almost like we're not going to be, we're not really asking permission from the parents anymore. Okay, we're moving on. That's how I want to look at it. Anyway, so really, truly, some telling pictures going on. No, things are not great. We're going to be dealing with this Kronos Hades for some time. And just let me explain. I know I've talked about Kronos Hades before, but by the time I'm done with all these videos, I'm thinking we'll know this. Kronos Hades is bad decisions by people in authority. Kronos Hades is corruption. Okay? One of my teachers made a prediction, Gary. He does a lot of predictive work, and he, talked about this and, the ushering in of this energy. And though he likes to dwell on the corruption and the bad decisions by people in authority, and I think we're going to become increasingly aware of that in the next 2 years, only because we live in a time where at one time they would sweep this stuff under the rug and maybe we wouldn't know about it for 50 years and then we would find out. That happens. How many times does that happen? Like, how many times have I myself personally been angry at what I found out that we learned as children that's not really true? And because of the age we're living in, they may think that they can pull wool over our eyes, but they really can't. It's just not the age. It's not the time. We've never been here before. So, interestingly enough, a lot of that will come to light. But I want to also look at the positive side, because all planetary configurations have both a positive and a negative, which is why in astrology, we don't really always, some things are a little bit worse than others, yes, but you don't really want to put judgment on something. I heard in Gary's speech, he talked about the grand trine of the water signs. They're not going to be real good for us, guys. And I know everybody's like there, but grand trines are so good. Yeah. No, they aren't. It's like one planet will tell you something, a lie, and then the other two are just going to go along with it. Okay? And because of the houses that are involved in these grand trines, particularly I think he was looking at the United States chart at that time, it's not good. We're not dealing with good houses, okay? So I think that especially when it's money, and part of this is money, okay, shared resources and things. So, because the 8th house is involved. And then 12th house is our spirituality, which is when it gets rough, then we got to get tough, okay? And the way to do that is through our own spiritualities. But just looking at this Kronos Hates in a completely different light, and I have an example already this week. For a number of years now, my boyfriend, my significant other, my partner in life, he has a family that has a really bad history of dementia and Alzheimer's. And of course, he and his brother are very concerned, as they should be, as we're now dealing with his mom, that they would get it. And I kept saying, you're not going to get it, because in our lifetime, it's going to be corrected. It's going to be corrected through DNA and CRISPR technology. And, I'm really into all of that stuff. I do medical astrology, so all the new things coming up, very interesting to me. Kronos Hates is medical breakthroughs. And just recently, I found out that in my area, the hospital I actually am affiliated with, because you have to assign yourself to one. It only is down the street. But they're actually doing transfusions now to beat Alzheimer's and dementia. And they're now doing it on people. So I thought they were still in studies. Woe is me. Okay, maybe they are still studying it, but they've now gotten to the elevation of people. I'm right. I know that is not something they're going to need to worry about. I don't think that anybody who has it in their family is really going to have to worry about that. I think that society is going to do away with that. Now, it does mean that we have to have faith in science, because we did away with measles and voila, they're back. So when you think about these things, you also have to think about how we're going to utilize it as a society. But I knew that they were going to do it, and this week I heard it. So yay. But that's going to be the case for many things, many illnesses, many different diseases. They are going to be making scientific breakthroughs that are beginning now. Well, the Japanese can grow back teeth. Sure wish they were doing that a little bit sooner for my own sake, but they're not. So I won't benefit from that probably. I'll still be doing implants. But even those, the implants, are, cutting edge. But they're not going to be cutting edge real short period of time, because now all the scientists are running to the labs to grow teeth. So some really cool stuff is beginning to happen, and we can look at Kronos Hades for that. Okay, so you think of Kronos as the authority figures, and you think of Hades as the study of disease, because that's what Hades is. It's disease, deterioration, the past, okay, which is why some people, and I'm saying people, because I'm not just talking about leaders of governments or anything, but some people in general are going to have their past combine and bite them in the butt. It's going to just come up and whack their butts. Okay? And so that's going to also be going on at the same time. So Chronos Hades is a big feature in what's going on in the world and what will be going on in the world for at least 7 years. Okay? So, moving on with that little speech. Let me get to my notes because I always work on this stuff ahead of time. So I want to get back to the full moon chart itself. And to do that, I even put down in my notes, please go to the pizza pie chart. Okay, first of all, notice this ascendant and notice this midheaven. And I'm going to tell you that when we look at it in Solar Fire, and by the way, these are designed by the same person. This is Gary, and he's got a team of people that work on these things, and they're going to be upgrading Solar Fire so that this Nova chart will be in there. But which means I think no asteroids in there, which means I might have to keep a version of my old Solar Fire. But let's look at some things here. Mars is on the ascendant. Uranus, look at them at both 0 degrees, is opposite that point on the descendant. Okay, now let's talk about the houses because that's one of the reasons I wanted the pizza pie chart. Oh, and by the way, the nodes are on the midheaven and the IC. Now, notice that they're about, this is slightly over degree, and this is slightly over degree, okay? So I normally wouldn't, maybe as I go through the chart, talk about them, which I will be when I get to the asteroids, because I like to stay within that degree. However, when you're talking about the angles of the chart, which is the midheaven, the ascendant, the descendant, and the IC, we can go 10 degrees on either side. We can open it up that wide. Okay, so that would mean Adamite is there, and so is Mercury, which is opposite. So you see those oppositions. All right, so let's talk about what that means. Mars coming in from the 12th. Anytime Mars is in the ascendant, it's anger, okay? And so there's an anger or an aggression, okay, of energy that's happening. And this could even be some of the rhetoric we're hearing because this is like angry messaging. I don't know how else to put it. Or angry communications or aggressive communications, okay? They're both direct, whereas over here, Adamitas and Uranus are both retrograde. So let me talk about that. So from the 12th house, we're looking at things that are more hidden or secret, things that are maybe happening behind the scenes. When you pull it out into, which of course it would be during this month, when you pull it out into the first house, you're now dealing with it being right out in the open, right there in front of you. You know, it's like people are identifying with it, so to speak, because it's the first house, I am. Okay? Whereas 12th house is about a spirituality. It's something that happens in the back. When we refer to the 6th house, we're referring to our day-to-day routines, activities, diets, healthcare. It refers to, I live with Uranus in the 6th house. I have Uranus in the 6th house. I don't like routine, okay? I am in complete control of my life, and I have always been. Because I'm a little different than, I would say, the majority of people. Unique in my own way, and I need absolute freedom on a day-to-day level, okay? And again, it's not going to be officially crossing over this line. It's actually retrograding back into the 6th house, or the house of day-to-day activities. Adamitas is remaining firm, standing your ground, but it's also being stuck. It's also being immovable, Okay? And that is in the seventh house, or the house of partnerships. Okay? Some of us could be dealing with some really angry partners who are saying some really nasty things, or friends, close people, that are just, you, no matter what you say to them, they're like a brick wall. Okay? And this need for freedom is huge. Okay? Freedom to be who we are in the course of our day. Freedom to eat whatever we want to eat when we want to eat it, because it's again, health, fitness, your work, your service. And I think people just need a little bit more freedom there, okay? Or freedom that comes from that. So that's important. Now, the north and south node, okay? Remember, we can go 10 degrees, so this Saturn would also be a part of the IC. Interestingly enough, Saturn, which is doing its last sojourn in its retrograde, but when it goes direct again, it's going to leave Pisces forever. Okay, so this is the last hit on the water signs. So basically, we're looking at the connections that we need to work with. The north node, not the south node. The south node is like those weaves of patterns that we create in our life, and then we keep falling back into them. Okay, so the south node, to me, is what we're learning to get ourselves out of. And that marks the outer world. Okay, the ninth house is our way of thinking. Some institutions fall here. It's basically what you see with the south node is, you know, people who say to me that because the United States is going through so much, they want to go back to the way it was. No, you don't. South node tells you, you really don't. And I have to always remind people, don't you understand that's how we got here? So we can't go back because we don't want to repeat this history. So in order not to repeat the history, this is what we might have to do. We have to connect within our own personal sphere. We have to reinforce our connections of our families, of our loved ones, of our close associates, of people who are rooted, because the IC, with us. And that's what we need to pay attention to at this point in time. That this isn't about opportunity, it's about connection. Okay? So we don't have an opportunity to change things as much as we think we do. I mean, yes, I'm a protester, absolutely. I think we should speak out and stand up and all of those things. But I do believe that the macro plan, the big plan, is already playing out. And that some of the changes that people want or trying to initiate will come to naught. Because there is no going back. And South Node is a great reminder of that. So I wanted to go through that. When I go back to let me just make sure. Yeah, let's go back, because now I'm going to go to the Aries point and talk about something else. Okay, now I go to my notes. I'm trying to be organized here. Okay, so I did talk about all of that, but let's look at something. Remember about the Mars and the Ascendant and how close they are, okay? So when Mars is in aspect, you're looking at the actions and the deeds of others. Situations where you're handled in a way that could lead to violence, okay? Remember I told you that. It is about fights, excitement, strife, and arguments with others. The other thing we wanted to see was how this Uranus affects that. See, there's no descendant So we have to go that way. And this is situations where we're going to actually be the cause of other people's excitement and irritation. Or not just that, but us getting excited about other people, sudden acquaintances, events of other people, to gather with others for special occasions. So that's what I mean about you're reconnecting with people, but we're also in that process going to upset one another. That's the way it is sometimes. In this picture, we not only have a Chiron to the family, Cupido, which, again, look at what Chiron is. It's the wounded healer, and it's also about alternatives. And we're going to be looking at that with regards to the families. I think we're already doing it. And here we have, I want to say, a disappointment and a transformation, but it's knowing that we're in a place of change, and how it's going to end up is still not known. Okay? And that the changes that are occurring are sneaking up on us. And it also refers to some things that will only be recognized in the future because they've been so secret. So all of those things are related to that new moon chart, which means no matter where you live in the world, you're probably on some level experiencing the opposition of Mars to Uranus and what that means. Okay, because Mars and Uranus are in opposition. I don't care where you live. I don't care what kind of chart you put it on. They're still opposite. Just like Admetus is in opposition to Mercury. Okay? It just is. And here we go again with profound thinking, profound concentration of thoughts. There's a sense of grief here. There's a real seriousness here. And it also refers to suspended, here we go, suspended conditions. We talked about this already, and a standstill. But it also refers to negotiations that are a dead issue. I know as a country we're dealing with that, but I think the world is dealing with that on another level. So those things are all true. So I wanted to point that out. Now, the other thing that we're going to do is, I'm not going to do anything else with this chart. I think that was good enough. I don't want to get too overwhelming with how I work with Uranian. I just want to point out that the sun for the United States is way in the axis of the Admetus to Mercury, and we are, as a country, in a standstill. I think they call it a shutdown. Okay, and a lot of people don't know when that's going to get going again. Well, this is a full moon chart, so it's not a good predictive chart. And we know that at the time of the full moon, we are in a shutdown. But the possibility for changes could happen already at the new moon, which is the 20th of November. Okay? I wrote that down too, so I could be ready. So, with that said, I'm going to change up my program here and revert back to my solar fire for the next part of this video. So I left with so, and I'm picking up with so. So here we are. It took me a few minutes this time. Sometimes I'm a lot quicker. But we're looking at, and I wanted to show the pizza pie part first because there's a 14-minute difference between one software to the other, okay? Just showing that. And that's one of the things that I like to point out is that although I'm using two different pieces of software, they're minutes different. But now we have so much more here that we can look at, okay? So I'm just going to start with, I'm just making sure I got through everything. There's a whole bunch of notes here, but that's for the asteroids. So let's just look at asteroids as they're on angles, okay? The first one we're going to look at is our memories, okay? The memory asteroid is only 4 minutes off of DC. Now, this would put it within range of the pizza pie chart, okay? So, memories. Our memories, we're remembering something. And I think that's pretty interesting. The Again, I did this chart has several things. So it's right here we got Shiva and Diana. Okay, so I'll explain quickly. These are going from the first into the second house, which is the house of money. We're only talking about 20 minutes or less. Shiva is like withdrawing from something in order to rebuild it. So sometimes you go away from something because they're in the process of remodeling. Sometimes it's about rage and withdrawing from something either out of rage or because of rage. Diana is animals, but it's also the idea of being dogged. Okay, so if somebody's dogging you, that's a hunter-prey thing, and that falls there as well. So you could withdraw because you're being dogged. Somebody who maybe isn't valuing the way that they should. So there's a couple of things that this could come out with, but also look at raging animals, animals that are angry. Okay, I would be. 2 minutes off. So, and that means that if it were the other chart, it would be on. We have going from the second to the third house, the house of communications, from the house of my value systems, I'm worth, I am, I own, then to I think. And here we have Pallas. Pallas is the enabler. They call it the political asteroids because politicians are really good at telling us things they think we want to hear, even if they're not true. So it's like an enabling thing. And what I would say to you is when it comes to particularly finances and your own value systems, you're going to have to look at how much you're enabling, simply put, or how much somebody else is enabling other people. So the whole enabling thing is going to show up pretty big. There's a Urania on the other side, but it's really out like a degree and 23 minutes. So I'm probably not going to use it because of the 23 minutes, but that's astrology and logical thinking, just to kind of give you an FYI there. I talked about the nodes. We got nothing here. We got nothing here. We got sadness, crying, tears, right sitting on the descendant. Ironically, in one chart, the last one, it would be coming from the 6th into the 7th, and in this chart, it's clearly in the 7th. So there could be other people that we're dealing with that are very, very sad. There could be deaths that people are dealing with. And so one of the ways to appease this is music or poetry, which are also ruled by this. But I've seen it more with tears and death and grieving. And so there's a lot of, and I do believe that there's a lot of grieving. Okay. I think that with wars going on, don't even get me started. I think it's really bad. Now, as we get up here, 2 minutes off of this one, which means it's still in the other one, is the asteroid Sappho. Sappho is interesting for 2 reasons. I heard something this morning that applies to Sappho, and ironically, November 5th, today is November 3rd, so I'm going to put this out right away. So we're in it today, okay? And one of the things that it talked about was that the fact that same-sex marriages is going to be on the table. I'm not really worried about it because even though I have a lot of friends that are married that are, in marriages with the same sex, and I know a lot of people, I definitely don't think it's going to affect anything. I believe that even if they did rule that way, they would put it back very quickly. But isn't that interesting? Because it was something from the past retrograde that is now is coming forward. And it's a Supreme Court issue. It may be taking over a year before it even comes to the table. But just so that you know that for me, I could look at Sappho through same-sex relationships. But Sappho is about bonding. It's about bonding with people where there's a commonality, a common belief, a common connection. It's not necessarily always partnerships. I just look at it with regards to the LBG community. I don't look at it the same way. In other words, there's things that I was always able to look at a chart and pick out if somebody was gay without them even being in the room. And I did use this asteroid, but this asteroid is more than that, because we do, all of us, come together with people who are, I don't know, like-minded, have common bonds, connect in certain ways, beliefs, whatever it is. And if you notice, it's only 2 minutes till it goes into the 8th house. So it's like partners or partnerships that then are going to go to combined resources, combined finances. And that's why I think that even if they tried to overturn it, wouldn't be able to, because too late, they've already been married for X amount of years. Now they have all these combined incomes. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Now that is in the United States. I don't know about other countries. So one of the things about astrology makes me very grossly aware of how we're not like our ancestors. We don't think like they do. We don't act like they do. And so, I would feel the same way that certain countries are not up to speed on some of these things. And perhaps they will be. Who knows? I mean, it is interesting, though, that it's right there on that angle. Or not on the angle, but actually on the house cusp. The next one that I would look at here is food issues, but it's out by about 12 minutes. Okay, so not real strong, but it does talk, and the only reason why I'm bringing it up is because the cost of food, and I don't care where you live in the world, the cost of food is just, and notice how it's in the 8th house, which is a financial house, is an issue, okay? And I don't care who you are or where you live, and that's why we all need to do better to take care of our neighbors. The next one I'm going to look at is ornamental. And oh boy, is this one. This one's easy for me in some respects. It's the United States chart, real easy. We just had the, I don't even know what to call him, the president. I say that with trepancy because he's really not my friend it's not somebody I support. The day that STAT benefits are done, he's having a big Great Gatsby gala at Mar-a-Lago. Okay, ornamenta, okay, something that's just for fun, just ornamental, just whatever. And at the time, now here is another 15 degree, and it's conjuncting that south node, which is rage. I think that the wealthy people, okay, who really do seem to have no respect for other people other than themselves, and they're very selfish that way. Not all, but the ones going to parties when everybody else is going to starve, I don't have any real respect for them, but I do believe there's going to be a lot of rage with them. Now, the other thing that's happening is some of the cabinet leaders have had to move into military bases. That's withdrawing. They can't go back home. They have to withdraw. Why? Because they're in the process of restructuring or trying to, I don't think they'll be able to do it, the country. So, in any event, jumping down to, I think that is it. Yeah, that's it. So we don't have any other asteroids that are kicking our butts in any other way. So I'm going to move very quickly because I don't want the videos to get too big. Seem to be getting so much longer now I do the Uranian part. Looking at the actual asteroid. So I'm going to do my usual. We're going to look first at the Aries point. So we got our first cross there, and our second cross will be there. Okay. So just like looking at midpoints, because we really should. Let me do this. Let's get exact. Not that it changes much in only 8 minutes, but here's that Admetus Jupiter. Here's the moon Poseidon. See, everything I've already talked to you about, okay? Just to kind of show you that the programs are very similar. They do show you the same thing. And that one went right to it. And here it is about Apollon Cupido. And could we be talking about family businesses? Okay, look at the Uranus nodes. We've already talked about it. This is charitable right here. Kronos to Venus is charity and being charitable. I think that's what's beginning to happen in a really good way, at least here in the United States, and I'm hoping in other places as well. Because honestly, people, this is how we're going to really make it through life, is holding the hands of our neighbors and joining forces. So we're going to look at this axis first, which I have them both marked. Okay, now the one thing I do want to point out is that the sun at 1323 is literally 1 degree and 33 minutes off of the Aries point. So when I get to these asteroids, some of them are going to be included in both the sun moon axis, which affects the whole world, as well as the Aries point axis. Okay, I'm going to start with the Aries point, though, just to clarify. We already talked about Adamete. And Adamete, the asteroid, we talked about Admetus. We're going to talk about Adamete. The asteroid is in the Aries point. So people being firm, people being settled, people being, or even feeling stuck, because I've heard that word a lot recently from somebody, is a part of what's going on in the Aries point. Okay, so Adamete is in there playing his role. Pain level. I almost hate that this one's here. Yeah, I had a bad day yesterday, for example. Not only did my mouth hurt, but so did my leg. When you don't use a part of your leg for several months, and I know people who've been through this can tell you this is true, it starts to hurt the whole leg. Okay, like I'm hurting from my knee to my pelvic area, but really it's my ankle that's messed up just because of the way that I can't use it or I have been using it, the modification. So pain level, particularly for things that have been ongoing. It's a retrograde, so things from the past. It's interesting because yesterday, my significant other, who has some spinal degenerative bone things and whatever going on, was doing great until yesterday. Today's in deep pain. Now, tomorrow he goes for a shot, so it's all good, but wow, did that come back. So look out for that. 3 minutes out from the Aries point. No, first of all, let's look at this next one. I almost skipped it. Ditto. What could ditto mean? Ditto is like a repeat thing. Ditto. That's a ditto. And so I'm not quite sure how I would use it in terms of examples. So perhaps it's something that in your own life, like I could just use it with my boyfriend's pain because it is the same pain. It just came back yesterday. So it's a ditto, okay? My mouth surgeries are a ditto. Been there and done that many times. So it could play in with that. It is related to things that have already happened in the past as it's retrograde. The fini means something's finished. One of the things that Gary talked about in his lecture, which I thought was really, really good, was that things are finishing, they're completing. And in particular, health matters, which, by the way, is the health part is also in the sun-moon axis. So it hits that within a minute. So something could be finished health-wise, where we're looking at things that were done with health-wise. Like I said, my significant other will get a shot. I'm looking at the end of particularly the broken ankle. And even my sinus is getting straightened out, though I have to have another surgery. But I'm looking at the end of that at this point, and during this time is when we'll set up the last appointment. So for a lot of us, there's some endings happening with health issues, health things. Not always in a good way. Some people it won't end in a good way, but other people it will. So, but whatever it is ending. We then go to Hera, which is our stomach, our guts. Listen to your gut, people. You ever hear that saying? Listen to your gut. And the reason why I say that is because Delbrook is running with it. They're only 5 minutes away from each other, and Delbrook is a liar. So you got to listen to your gut. We're going to have to start being more spiritual for the simple reason that we're going to have to start using our intuitions more, especially with AI. We're going to have to learn really good ways to look at something and decide whether it's real or not. And it's begun as Hera and Delbrook are in there. Now, I'm just going to stay with the Aries point now. There is a sun-moon thing in there, and I'll get back to it in a minute. The Sisyphus tells us that something is happening again. Boy, is that like Ditto repeating itself? Yeah. Sisyphus is you're rolling the boulder up the mountain again. Okay, so yes, there are certain things that are going to have to be done again and again. Okay, so do-overs. There's Ditto as well. And then we have more health with Hippocrates with Brace. Now, what Hippocrates is, and I can say in my life, I can really relate to this. I do have a moon in the Aries point, though. I have a health matter that is going to require 2 surgeries in my mouth. So it's funny, okay? But think of Brace, too, as brace yourself. Brace yourself when it comes to certain health matters or issues. The next one we're going to look at is, this is a big one, so I'm going to be giving you a lot. Industria, which is being productive. Smiley, which is, I always say, don't trust people that smile all the time. They're trying to pull the wool on you. Hidalgo is not speaking up or speaking out. You got to learn to speak up and speak out. Hecate. And Hecate is a lot like Hera in that it is a very, she rules more, so she can even be like predictive dreams. I had some strange dreams last night, speaking of which, but paying attention to your dreams. But what I think it is also is pay attention to your intuition and speak out, particularly if it relates to your work and people who are trying to get more out of you, whether it's customers, bosses, whatever it is. Okay, that the fact is that if you don't speak out, okay, then you're going to definitely then you're going to be responsible for that palace that we saw down there, which is enabling. If you don't speak up or speak out, you're enabling. So I think that there's a responsibility there that we all have to step up a little bit and take. Check, which can mean check, but really a lot of times it's money, is also in the Aries point. Ironically, it's running with Rockefeller, and Rockefeller is big money. It's for us to create a check on big money. I think that's really important. And I think, again, it doesn't matter who you are or where you live. I think that is something that we could work with. Now, another way to look at this is that some people will get checks that are big money, okay? And then they're going to do things, invest or whatever with that big money. So that can happen in cases of inheritances. That comes to mind right away. But things that may be investments that were cashed in. So there's a couple different ways that can show up. The next set that I'm going to look at is huge. And it's going to include, and I'll come back to that when I get to the Sun-Moon axis. I have a lot of circles on here, which means that it's included with the Sun-Moon axis. I'm going to read them off. Olympus, simply put, is optimism. A lot of optimism. Calypso is information that's not all there. It's just not. It's missing information. Things we don't know. Melancholia, which is melancholy, which is depressions. And Machiavelli. Okay, so let's look at that all together. I think that our optimism is going to be affected by things we don't know. And as we find those things out, and you will, because this is a full moon, and that's what full moons represent, is things coming to light. I think that the Machiavellian, what's been going on, Machiavellian, can and will create a depression. Okay, a good example is if you read the book Nobody's Girl, which I did, and you go into that and you realize after a while you can't keep reading, you have to put it down because it's that awful. There is so much bad stuff in there, okay, done by bad people, obviously, but you can't keep reading it because it is depressing, okay. And there's still, even though she wrote the book, there's a whole chapter at the end where she talks about how she knows more, but she can't say because she's afraid for the lives of her family and of herself. Interesting, considering she then theoretically, or did, I don't know, commit suicide. She did have health issues, so it's not unreasonable to think that. Remember we talked about that enabling of Pallas, and I thought, we got to be really careful about enabling, which is also a political asteroid. Then we come to this one, Hebe. Hebe is directly enabling. That is like, now Hebe can be service people, okay? So, you go to a restaurant and somebody's going to wait on you. That's Hebe too. But if you think about how much we wait on or cater to certain people, certain issues, we're enabling. Boy, we have to be careful of that. I think as a population, we have to be aware of that. And the last asteroid I want to talk about, and I'm going to give you a whole lecture on it. There are certain asteroids that I now use in ways that maybe my teachers didn't or don't. And so what I do is I do like a deep dive on them, and then I start using them, and I start seeing how they work, and yada-da. And this is one of them. And this is Prometheus. Okay, so let's talk about who Prometheus is. He's a god, okay, and he gave fire to humans from Olympus, okay. He really loved humans, and he gave us fire, and he suffered for it, okay. He also helped develop us from clay, it says. But Zeus retaliated, and his liver would get eaten out every day, and then overnight it would come back, because remember, he's a god, he can't die. He was helped eventually by Hercules. Okay, so when I look at him, I think of the fact that he represents betrayal of the gods. I think that there are whistleblowers coming, people. I think they're already here. I don't know how much we're learning about them. I think when you read Nobody's Girl, there is this concept of betrayal of the very wealthy. Look for it. It also talks about risks for overreaching, things that could be unintended, okay? Like, in other words, unintended consequences that can also result in tragedy. But he was a lone genius, and his efforts helped mankind. But he is considered a betrayer, a theft, a trick, and a trickster. But he did it sort of like a Robin Hood, like he did it for the marginalized. He did it for the lower level. So he, gave us stuff from the gods that wasn't supposed to be there. So look for that. Look for the betrayal. Look for a godlike Robin Hood type person, okay? Even though when they do this, they may suffer, okay? Or people around them could suffer. So That's that. Now I want to look at, now realize they are close. So we're going to go to, hold on, I'm almost there. There we go. It should be 23. So I'm going to go back down to 23. Because you can see that our axis grows. And there's your Jupiter ascendant. It's cheerful. We're not going to be, we're going to be making connections, and we are going to be cheerful. Okay, so the gloom and doom concepts are things that we seem to be able to rise above right now, which is just really cool. And I saw that in the last chart, and it made me think of healing. And especially Chiron involvement would always also increase the healing. Also look what that sun is conjuncting. That's victory. That's victory. Okay? Victoria. It's victory. So I do believe that by us stepping up and helping one another, they're not going to win. We're going to be here for each other. And that's a really good thing. Now, I'm going to add on to what we're dealing with here. So, okay, so the first, let me read these off to you. Oh, I got them written here. Okay, the first one is 1323 fixed, or 4323 on a 9-degree dial. The next one we're going to be looking at, and it also connects up here with 2823. Okay, mutable. See that? 2823 and 1323. Now, across, so we have to go across now. We'll start with 553. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 50. Mercury. Okay, let's just go to Mercury, which I did. And I'm going to go to the right minute, so we'll just go to 53. So we can talk again about, we are going to also I didn't want to do that. We're also going to separate from people due to our, to our differences in, I went so too far. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I go back to that. Okay, so there's a separation because of us. Some of the reasons we're separating from people is because philosophically they believe really differently than we do, and we're not okay with it one way or the other. It doesn't suit us. Okay, that would be Poseidon and Saturn. Okay, that there's a difference of belief systems. Okay. So there is some good stuff here. There's going to be some good news that comes from authority figures. So there, and that's the judges in our case, in the United States, ruling in favor of get that money out there because the money's there. So there's going to be stuff like that. Look at this too. This Mars. This could be working in partnerships, but it can also be fighting within partnerships. Okay, so that's the axis that we're going to look at now, and you can see that it's relatively close to the Aries point. So now I'm going to go back and continue. Across the way here, not only did we have victory, but we have an abundance, abundantia. I think we're going to have an abundance of victories. And I think in part it's because as people we're changing. Also, productivity, okay? Which I already talked about. That's your industria. It's right there. It's a part of this axis. And I think that we're going to be able to literally help ourselves a lot. The next ones that we're going to look for are hanging out with the moon. And I already talked about Victoria, which is your victory. And it's victory over things that have even happened in the past. So really, it's I always say our law works so slow. So things that might have really upset us a little while ago coming in. But you got to understand that the moon is also running with con man, McGregor. And so there's a con man or a scam artist that we need to, can't make this stuff up, guys. I did not make this up, all right, that we're dealing with. Wouldn't be the grifter in the White House, would it? So, we look for that. The other thing that we can add in, remember I talked about the health and the finishing of health. That's also in this axis, especially the health part. Okay, so watch out for your health. All right. Um, the next one, truth, and so there's going to be truth about, it's called Brunetto, okay, but it also deals with things like cremations. Interesting, because they just found a whole bunch of burnt body piles in the desert, which is, again, I don't make this up. I mean, this stuff's like here again, you know. But truth and about things burning up or being burnt up, listen to your gut and realize that you're dealing with a liar. Truth and liar are falling in the same grouping. Okay? So I always like when that happens, because that means somebody's lying, but you got to know the truth. You're going to know the truth in your gut. Next one is Pinocchio. That is a liar. Okay, so liar, liar. Okay, I love asteroids because repeat themes are a common occurrence, and when something keeps repeating, pay attention. The sun is running with Memoria, and I already talked about Memoria. That's that mental, you know, you want to remember. People are having memories, they're remembering things, and that wasn't the one at the Ascent, that was Mezzanine. Memoria is a different one, but here we go, repeat the theme. Repeat the theme. So, I come down and I want to add in, so we talked about Industria, Smiley, Hidalgo, and Hecate. Remember, that was the productivity. Don't listen to people who are smiling. Speak up, speak out. Listen to your gut. All right. Oh, and I forgot one there. Merlin. That way you can actualize it yourself. You see? Merlin is the magician. It's about actualizing things on your own. And that is now joined with Mercury and the asteroid Wen. That's, again, there's some stuff in here that's like shines lights and says, hey, it's not going to be that bad. It's not going to be that bad. So I'm going to read those again. Mercury, Wen, news of a win. Industria, Smiley, is, again, that ability to be productive. Maybe be productive and keep smiling. Maybe keep smiling as you, Hidalgo, speak up and speak out as you listen to your dreams and your gut. Listen to what you feel, your intuition, and then actualize things for yourself. A little lesson for us all. The next one is quite large, and this combines with the Rockefeller check, okay? So it's plunge, which is, take the chance, take the plunge. Varda, which is truth that sets you free. Learning that truth will make you free. Icarus is, again, taking chances, so it's like saying plunge. Take the plunge, take the risk. And it will hit. Bam, and then you have Rockefeller and check. So it could, in some cases, taking a plunge can help people with big money or earn or get more money. I actually did some banking this morning myself. So then it moves on and we get to Poseidon. And this is not Poseidon, the trans-Neptunian that I already spoke of, but it is read the same way. And so it's telling us two things. It's telling us to go for higher thoughts, be a higher, better, more honorable person. But also, if you're studying, go to the next level, okay? Make yourself better that way. But it's also referring to that idea that propaganda, all the lies in there. I mean, I could go through. We got Pinocchio, we got Delbruck. So, you almost need a little bit of intuition, and that's a little Poseidon, but be careful of propaganda. Propaganda. Okay, then my thing with Elliptus, Calypso, Melancholia, and Machiavelli, and I already talked about that. It's like an optimism, but then you don't know everything. And then, the melancholia, it's almost as though even too, when you look at this, our optimism could be affected by all things we don't know. Because of the Machiavellian energies, we have a little bit of depression. Okay? And that, now there is one more. Oh, there is one more that I did not put in that is a part of the Aries point. And that's Oya, O-Y-A. And what she represents is wind, lightning, and storms. We are in storm season here. And I did want to bring it up because of that. It means she tore. She tore. And it's tornadoes. Okay, so I wanted to bring that up because we want to all be a little bit more aware of what's happening with our weather. We've been so lucky so far, but this is still storm season and we are still game for some natural disasters. So we want to be very, very careful and be very alerted to what's going on in the weather. And now, with that said, I thank you watching, particularly to the end. I wish you all only happy readings till we meet again. And if you would, I know it helps the channel, but on the other hand, I don't do SEO, so the channel will probably remain small. But I love hearing from you. So if you comment, I generally always respond. Don't get very many, so it's easy, but that's the advantage of a small channel. Besides, no trolls. In any case, till we meet again, I wish you all only the happiest of